Hello, today we're going to be doing leases. Contract to list a lease. So I'm going to go through the forms that you're going to need to turn in to the office, a listing lease. So basically what that means to you is you see a property that the owner wants to lease out, say $1,500 a month, that's our example. So you're going to go over and list it for them and then put it on MLS and market it to get a tenant. So in order to do that, you have to fill out the listing lease form. So the first form that I filled out, and you can find these in app files as well as I have a book with all of the leases and the lease listing filled out and all of the forms filled out, so you can refer to those. But in your training manual, I want you to fill it out yourself so you can practice and get good at filling these forms out. And then read all the forms. Take your time, read through. I'm going to go through the points, and if there's anything that you don't understand, highlight it and come to me. Because when you're explaining these things to people, you want to be clear and you want to make sure that you're not saying something that isn't correct. So we have the listing form required. This basically, it gives the front end the instructions on how to proceed with showings. So we have to get people into the property, and our front desk usually handles that for the agents. So as you can see, you just put the owner's name and everything and their contact in this form. It asks for all the forms that go together with the lease, which is going to be the floor sheet, listing contract, MLS sheet, tax roll, and seller's disclosure, if that's a sale. But since this isn't a sale, it wouldn't apply here. But so this is a lease, and you can put on here lease so they would know for the paperwork. And then it says this is the showing instructions, that this one's on lockbox. And the lockbox combination is SPI. Now we have the combo lockboxes that could have numbers or letters, or we have what we call the electronic lockbox, and that's what you have to get a key issued from the board, and that will have a PIN number and then electronically transmit. It's like a computer, and open that up, and that's what we call electronic or Supra. So you could hear it referred to in either one of those names. Then sometimes the owners may be there, or the tenant may have to be there. So whatever the instructions are, if you have to call the tenant, the office can call the tenant. You want to put those instructions down. So this is a very important sheet. It needs to be filled out with all of your listings that you turn in, so we can handle those showings for you. Now, this is the two different lease contracts that we have. There's two forms that you can use. I'm going to be going over the board form. I have the other form in here, which is the exclusive right to lease. The other, and this is the FAR form. So, so you could use either one. I'm just more comfortable, and I use this one for me. I have examples of both of them, so read through them. This is filled out, so you'll be comfortable, and you can kind of go through this. But I'm going to go over the board lease with you, and then after that I'm going to go through the different things that you may want to bring with you when you're starting out. So basically the owner's name, of course, and the office, the address. This just has the expiration date. We usually take lease listings for 3 months. It asks if there's an association, and we say no. It's asking what we're going to be asking for rent, and we're saying $1,500, and that would be the for the rent here. Then it's asking for security deposit. If there isn't a pet, which depends on the owner if they want a pet or not, it has $250 or whatever the owner may decide. It has last month rent, and it has for a first month's rent. So when you're doing a rental, you're going to be collecting for first, last, and security, possible pet deposit, or maybe 2 securities if the property is really nice. Now, something you want to remember in rentals, when you have the rental client, you want to, whatever the month's rent is basically the commission. So you want to get that for an escrow, and then when you go to the property, you need cleared funds on the day that you're going to actually let the renter move in. So if you get the $1,500, that would be split between the 2 companies. And then you would take the other $3,000, and that check would be made out directly to the owner. So make sure that's right, and we'll go over that again when I do the contract to enter into a lease. So that was basically the first page. The second page just says if there's going to be sales tax. If it's 1 day under 6 months, there's no, over 6 months, there's no sales tax due. 1 day under 6 months, it's a seasonal rental, then there's sales tax due. So that will be up to the landlord to send to the state. For the personal, it's not furnished, it asks if it's furnished or unfurnished. And then it asks who's going to be responsible for what. Basically, for the insurance, the owner will be responsible to take care of all different insurances, except for the contents, and that's wrong. So I need to change that on the thing, so I'll just remember to do that. But anyway, for the contents insurance, that will be paid for by the tenants. So all the other insurance will be paid for by the owner. For the cable television will be paid for by the tenant, electric, and any kind of utilities will most likely. With seasonal rentals, that usually is handled by the owner. So in this case, it will be all handled by the tenant. For the real estate, personal property tax, personal property is basically the properties inside the property, not the contents. That would be the tenant, but the personal property would be the refrigerator and all the appliances and things like that. That would be the responsible of the owner. And all of the maintenance items, of course. The things that are negotiable would be pool and lawn. And you can ask them, will you be taking care of the pool or the lawn? For the lease, it is 1 month. That's for the brokerage commission, 1 month, or you can say 10%. Now, if you do say 10%, since it's over the 1 month, you have to get the difference of it in a check form from the landlord. You can never disperse out of the last in security due to the fact that that isn't money that belongs to the landlord. That's the money that belongs to the tenant and the landlord's paying you. So that money needs to be kept in a separate Florida account, and you need to let the landlord know. If they don't do that, then it's not going to be our problem, but we do like to inform them that that's the law and that that's how they should abide by the law in case they have any problems down the road with the tenants. This basically says that we have the exclusive right to lease, that if the property is leased, then they owe the commission. If there's a renewal contract in this, so you can make a decision whether you want to charge a renewal or not. Basically, they would owe you another month after the year is up if the tenant decides to stay. The protection period is basically, it's in our listing contract and in our rental contract. If you have a listing and say that the listing expires, in 3 months you couldn't rent the listing, then the day afterwards, one of the tenants that was shown during that listing period writes a contract to lease, they would still owe you a commission up to 180 days. You could limit this to 90 days. 180 is a little ridiculous, but up to 180 days. Unless it's relisted with another realtor, then they would owe you nothing. So that is what it's our respect between our community, that once a property is relisted, even with the prior showings, we go under the new listing term. So, but if the owner rented it himself and it was the day after your listing expired, they are not allowed to do that. So you would be compensated then. So that's basically what that means. For representing the tenant, that basically this is say that you're representing the landlord on this, and that you're going to be compensated, and it gives you your duties. This is just stating that it's sale to the lessee if they buy the property, and then what they'll pay, and that's filled in at 6%. So that needs to get filled in. Then this is just saying that they're going to release keys to a lockbox for you. I mean, these things are just retained deposits. Basically, if the tenant defaults and they put down a deposit and everything gets signed, and then they said, I'm not moving in, the brokers would get 50% and the owner would get 50% up to their commission. So if you had a $10,000 commission, you're still only allowed to get up to your commission, $1,500. So you wouldn't get 50% of $10,000. So it's going to be, whatever your commission is, that's where the limit is. So that's what that states. And then the failure to perform, that the owner would have consequences if the tenant failed to perform. I'm sorry, this is having to do with the landlord would have consequences if you performed and they didn't perform in paying you. So that is what that means. sign, that you have the right to put a sign on the property. Deposits, that we are able to accept deposits and pay out the owners. The care and custody is going to be deemed on the owner. And other listings, if they do go through other people and they list it multiple times, they will owe commissions for all those times. So it's best for them not to do that. Laws affecting the property and the transaction. The FERPTA law, basically that they have to pay if they're a foreign person, that they have to pay for the government for having the money. For fair housing and other laws that pertain. Always remember, fair housing is extremely important, and you always want to respect fair housing laws. Get yourself familiar with those, because that's where you can really have a lot of problems with renting. You can't discriminate for any reason whatsoever. The only thing you can discriminate for is credit and job history and things like that, if that isn't solid. But you want to really kind of have a policy on what you are going to accept. And you don't want to, discriminate someone for having children. That's a bad discrimination thing that you can get in trouble for. So if you have a pool, you can't say, well, we're not taking kids. That's totally against fair housing. So brush yourself up on those laws again. Make sure that you never interfere with the fair housing laws, because that can be huge consequences. The successors, of course, that this would be on their heirs, attorney fees, breach of contract, and final agreement. And basically just sign that. It's just the lease, the agreement. Like I said, just go through it. It's pretty standard. It's a standard board form that I use. I like this form because it spells everything out with renewals, and it also spells out for if the tenant buys a property. The other one here I have filled out. This is the FAR agreement, and you can review both. My suggestion, like I said, is to read them both. Use what you feel comfortable with, but make sure you fill them out right. And then here, the compensation here is where they have that if the tenant buys the property, it again is, here's a 90 days here, and then I don't usually use this form, but trying to see exactly where it is on this form, since I don't usually use it. Compensation. This might be the form that doesn't have that in here. I think that's why people shy away from using this form. I don't know if it has in here if the property is sold. So, we really got to be careful on using this form. I would highly advise you. You're going to be going back with different forms that you're going to use. That's the reason why I really don't use this form. That's the reason why. So if the tenant buys a property, you're not protected under this form. So I would highly suggest that you use the other form. I think, because I had a situation like this actually happen to me. I got very lucky and got paid. Nope, I don't see it in here. If another suggestion that you might want to put it here, that they will compensate you 6% if the tenant buys the property when they're in there. Every once in a while that does happen, and you want to make sure that you're covered. So it's as simple as that. So that basically covers everything on filling out an agreement. Agreement to enter into a listing contract for lease. Now, the forms that are included in here, this is your MLS form. So this is what you'll put, it's called your data entry form. So when you get the listing, you'll be loading it into MLS, which is simple. But the best thing to do is, I put a copy here, is to always carry these until you're really comfortable. Like most agents don't carry these anymore. But this is the data input form. So you can fill this out and you'll know line by line when you're going to be adding what everything stands for. So I highly suggest that you bring the rental data entry form and you can see exactly what you need to enter in, so you don't have any problems when you have to load the listing. Also, then the public records, you want to make sure that the owner matches who's on the contract. So you want to make sure that the right person, that you're not renting a property that you aren't allowed to rent. So you want to make sure it matches who's signing your contract. And then we have both. This is from the bcpa.net, Broward County Property Assessors.net, appraiser.net. So you want to have a copy of this, and you also want to have a copy of the basic tax roll. And another thing too is, now that you're learning all this stuff for the first time, I highly recommend that you go to all the MLS trainings. You'll be able to do those at the board. The reason why I don't train that is because I have bad habits. For being in the business over 25 years, I sometimes cut things short, and I really want you to learn the MLS. That's your lifeblood. That's the most important thing. So you really need to take all MLS classes between Matrix and, take whatever you can get into. Matrix is the big one now, the Infusion. Those two are the ones we're going to. I'm still on the old system, which they're getting rid of, but I'm just used to it, so that's where I just kind of go naturally. I don't even think twice about it, which is the reason why I don't train you for it. So get to those board classes, get to all of them. Also, if there's any contract classes, go to those. I'm going to go through all the contracts in depth. I've just gone through the listing of the leases. So again, go through. I have the cheat book here, so you can cheat and figure out if you're missing something or and correct yours. Fill yours out to make sure you can do it competently. Read all the contracts inside and out so you're comfortable. If you have a question, call me. And then also on app files at the very bottom, there's a training, and you'll see under there is a completed lease, and all the contracts will be completed in that area. So you can go through, review, see how things are filled out, and then watch the videos to get comfortable. Well, thank you, and have a great day. And I look forward to getting a lot of leases for listing leases out there. Have a good day.